The cake has 41 candles. None of them are lit. It sits in the center of a table built for 12, inside a penthouse that floats 40 floors above Seoul's glittering spine, and the man staring at it has not moved in 11 minutes. Not because he is thinking. Not because he is grieving. But because somewhere between the age of 23 and everything that came after, Kang Dae-jin stopped knowing what to do with stillness that wasn't strategy. The city breathes below him. Neon bleeding up through floor-to-ceiling glass. A million people moving, celebrating, arguing, falling in love in cramped apartments and loud restaurants and streets that smell like fried fish and exhaust and winter. All of it happening 40 floors down, in a world that continues without his permission. Up here, nothing moves. The security panel by the elevator reads, "All clear." 14 cameras. 3 backup systems. A rotating biometric code changed every 72 hours. Only 3 people alive have access to this floor without triggering an alarm. Only 3 people, and he has not spoken to any of them in months, and that is exactly how he prefers it. If you are watching this and you have ever built a wall around yourself so high that you forgot there was a door, this story is for you. Stay with it. Because what happens next will change the way you think about who walks into your life and why. The clock on the far wall reads 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes left of a birthday he did not plan to acknowledge, surrounded by security no one can breach and silence no one can fill, and Kang Dae-jin reaches forward, not to light the candles, not to cut the cake, but to push it slightly to the left, because the symmetry was bothering him, and control over small things is the only comfort left when the large things stopped being controllable a long time ago. His phone sits face down on the table. No missed calls. He already knew that. He checked 3 minutes ago. He checked the time before that. A man who controls shipping routes, construction bids, and the quiet financial decisions of 6 city councilmen has been checking his phone every 3 minutes on his birthday like someone waiting on a message that was never going to come. He turns the phone face down again. 11:59 p.m. And then, a sound that should be impossible. The elevator activates. Not from the lobby. Not from the parking level. From this floor's internal call system, which means someone is already inside the building's private shaft, ascending, and the security panel that should be screaming at him in red is still reading all clear, which means whoever this is did not just breach his door. They breached his entire system. Dae-jin's right hand drops below the table before the thought finishes forming. The elevator light climbs. 38. 39. His fingers find cold steel. 40. The doors open. She is not what he expected. The woman who steps out of the elevator moves the way people move when they have been running for days and their legs have forgotten how to stop. Forward momentum held together by nothing except the specific kind of desperation that looks almost like courage from a distance. Her coat is missing a button. Her eyes are scanning the room before her feet have fully cleared the doors, not the trained scan of someone in his world, but the raw, animal sweep of someone who has been hunted long enough to start doing it automatically. She is Nigerian. He reads this in her bone structure, her bearing, the way her chin stays level even now. Even here. And then behind her, holding the back hem of her coat in one small fist, a girl. 7 years old, maybe. Round face. Eyes that take in the penthouse with the unhurried curiosity of someone who has not yet learned that rooms this expensive are supposed to make you feel small. She clutches a backpack against her chest like it is a living thing that needs protecting. Nobody speaks. Dae-jin does not move his hand from beneath the table. He studies the woman the way he studies everything, looking for the performance beneath the performance, the angle inside the angle. But there is no angle here. What he is looking at is not calculation. It is the face of someone who has already lost everything except the one thing standing behind her, and who walked into the most dangerous room in Seoul because every other option was already gone. "Please," the woman says. Her voice holds. "Barely. I was told you are the only one who can stop them." Dae-jin says nothing for 4 seconds. Because that sentence alone is a loaded gun. Nobody uses those words in a room like this without understanding exactly what they are asking. People do not come to him for help. They come to him when help no longer exists anywhere else, which means whatever is chasing her has already closed every door that normal people try first. "What did you bring into my building?" he asks. His voice is flat. The kind of calm that has nothing to do with peace. The woman swallows. When she speaks again, the steadiness in her voice cracks. Just one fracture, just enough to let the real fear through. "People who will not stop," she says, "until my daughter is gone." The girl's grip tightens on her mother's coat. And Daejin's hand, still wrapped around the weapon beneath the table, does not move. But something behind his eyes shifts. Something small. Something he will spend the next hour trying to reverse. He looks at the girl. She looks back at him. No fear. Just those wide, serious eyes reading his face like she is trying to decide something important about him. "What is your name?" he asks. And he does not know why he asks it. It is not information he needs. It will not change the calculation. It will not tell him whether she is a trap or a complication or a problem he can still close the door on. The girl tilts her head slightly. "Adiz," she says. He already knows, even before she finishes saying it, that closing the door is no longer an option. Her name is Nkechi Balagan. She says this without being asked, which is either honesty or the kind of practiced openness that people use to appear harmless. He watches her face while she says it and decides it is honesty, which is almost worse, because honest people in rooms like this are always in more trouble than the ones who know how to lie. For years in Seoul. She came for the teaching work, found enough of it to stay, learned the language faster than most immigrants he has encountered, and he has encountered many because people who exist between two worlds are useful in his line of work, and he has always paid attention to useful things. 3 months ago, a logistics company reached out with an offer. Competitive salary. Flexible scheduling. Administrative work, nothing complex. The contract was clean. The office address was real. The people who interviewed her were professional and warm in that specific way that costs money to perform convincingly. She took the job. The first 2 months were exactly what they promised. And then, gradually, in the way that the worst discoveries always happen, things stopped adding up. Cargo manifests that contradicted shipping logs. Routes that looped through ports with no commercial reason to be included. A room in the secondary warehouse she was told was for equipment storage, kept double-locked, that hummed at night with a sound that was not equipment. She made one mistake. She opened the door. Daejin watches her face as she tells him this part. She does not perform it. She does not pause for effect. She says it plainly, the way people describe things that broke something in them that has not finished breaking yet. "They came to my apartment 4 days later," she says. 2 men. They did not threaten me directly. They just told me, very calmly, that my daughter was insurance now. That if I said anything to anyone, Adiz would disappear first. Adiz is sitting in the chair beside her mother, drawing in the small notebook from her backpack. Not listening or pretending not to. Daejin absorbs this. And then something cold settles in his chest, because he has been listening to the routing pattern she described, the specific port sequence, the double manifest system, and he knows this architecture. He knows it because he designed it. 12 years ago, for a different purpose, in a different version of this organization, before the people he trusted with it decided they had more use for it without him. The men hunting her are not strangers. They are the remnants of something he built and tried to bury. "Who told you to come here?" he asks. Quiet. Precise. She meets his eyes. "A man named Emeka. He said he used to work for you. He said you were the only one left who still had enough power to move against them." Emeka. Daejin says nothing, but his jaw tightens by approximately 2 millimeters, which, for a man whose face almost never moves, is the equivalent of a sharp intake of breath. Because Emeka is not supposed to be alive. And whoever has kept him alive this long did it for exactly this kind of moment. He should send her away. The math is clean. She has been followed here. She has to have been because no one finds this building on their own, which means his location has been burned, which means every minute she stays is a minute the walls around this room get thinner. The professional response is to take whatever intelligence she carries, move her out through the service exit, change his own position before dawn, and treat this evening as the security failure it is. He knows all of this. He does not move toward the exit. Adiz has put her notebook away. She is sitting with her small hands flat on the table, looking at the cake. Studying it with the focused attention of a child who has identified something that does not make sense and is quietly working out why. She slides off the chair. Nkechi reaches for her arm. Adiz! Daejin raises one hand. He does not know why he does it. It is not a decision that passes through conscious thought. It happens below thought, in some older part of him that has been switched off for so long he forgot it was still connected to anything. Adiz walks to the cake. She stands on her toes to see over the edge of the table, examines the unlit candles still pressed into the frosting at even intervals by the bakery staff who set this up 3 hours ago and left without a word. Then she reaches into her backpack and removes a small box of matches. She begins pressing the candles in more firmly, one by one, with the seriousness of someone performing a task that matters. Nkechi is watching Daejin. He can feel it. She is trying to read him the same way he read her, looking for what lives beneath the surface, looking for whether the thing that just made him lower his hand is real or a performance of something real, which are not the same thing, and she clearly knows the difference. Adiz lights the first candle. Then the second. The small flames catch and hold, warm against the cold geometry of the room, and something about the light, the specific warmth of it, the way it flickers slightly in the climate-controlled air, reaches past every wall Daejin has spent 17 years constructing and touches something he buried so deep he stopped checking on it. His sister used to do this. He locks that thought immediately, puts it back where it belongs. Adiz finishes the last candle and steps back and looks at him with the full authority of a 7-year-old who has completed her part of a shared responsibility and is now waiting on the other person to complete theirs. "You have to make a wish," she says. No negotiation. No softness around the edges. Just, this is how it works. Daejin looks at the flames. For 17 years, wishing meant wanting. And wanting meant something to lose. And he already knew, already lived, exactly what losing felt like when it came for the things that mattered most. He opens his mouth. His phone buzzes. One vibration. A known number. He looks at the screen. "You are not the only one watching tonight." 5 words. No punctuation at the end, which is a specific kind of confidence. The confidence of someone who knows they do not need to perform a threat because the threat is already in motion and has been for longer than tonight. Daejin does not react visibly. His face stays level. His breathing stays controlled. But his eyes move, across the penthouse, window to corner to doorway to window, running the geometry of the room against everything he knows about how a surveillance operation positions itself when it wants the target to feel the exposure but not understand the full shape of it yet. They knew she was coming here. Not suspected. Knew. They did not chase her to this building, they directed her to it. Which means Emeka, whoever kept him alive, whoever sent him to Nkechi with Daejin's name and address, that entire chain was constructed. Built specifically to deliver a woman with a frightened child to a penthouse 40 floors up where the exits could be controlled. This was never about Nkechi. She is the delivery mechanism. He crosses to the secondary security panel on the far wall, 3 quick inputs, and the readout that returns is the readout that changes the temperature of everything. External network, interference detected. Signal degradation at 43% and climbing. Not jammed yet. Building toward it. Which means the window is closing and whoever is outside is waiting on one specific thing before they move. A position, a signal, a confirmation that the package has been received and the door is about to lock from the outside. "Step away from the windows," he says. Nkechi moves without asking why, pulling Adiz with her, because she has spent enough of the last 3 months reading danger in people's body language to know that this tone means now. Daejin goes back to the panel. He inputs an override, his own modification, not in the building's official system, installed 2 years ago for exactly this category of situation, and the screen responds for exactly 1 second before it goes dark. The panel is dead. External network, fully jammed. Elevator, disengaged at shaft level. Emergency stairwell, remote bolt engaged. The room locks around them like a hand closing into a fist, and the sound of it, the specific mechanical sound of bolts driving home in sequence, is quiet enough that someone without Daejin's particular kind of attention would miss it entirely. Adiz looks up at her mother. Nkechi looks at Daejin. They're already inside the building, he says. Not a question. And then the lights flicker. Twice. And from somewhere beyond the sealed door, not from the elevator, not from the stairwell, but from the service corridor that was not supposed to exist on any floor plan this building ever filed with the city, comes the sound of footsteps. Multiple. Measured. Moving without urgency, because urgency is for people who are not certain of what they are walking into. Adiz's hand finds her mother's wrist and holds on. Daejin does not reach for his weapon yet. He looks at Nkechi. The man who sent you here, he says. Emeka. Did he give you anything to carry? Anything at all, a phone, a document, something for your daughter's bag. Nkechi's face changes. It is a small change. A fraction of a second where something moves behind her eyes before she can stop it. And in that fraction of a second, Daejin understands that this situation is not what he thought it was 60 seconds ago. It is worse. The footsteps stop. That is the part that should not be ignored, not the sound of them approaching, but the sudden absence of sound, because trained men do not stop moving unless they have reached a position or received a signal, and either answer means the next 30 seconds are going to define everything that comes after them. Daejin is already moving. He crosses to the north wall in 8 steps, presses his palm flat against the third panel from the left, and a section of wall releases, not dramatically, not with the theatrical groan of a hidden door in a film, but with a quiet mechanical click, the kind of sound that only exists because someone spent a great deal of money making sure it would never be loud. Behind it, a narrow corridor, dark, smelling of concrete and recycled air. Here, he says. Not loud. Not a question. Nkechi moves Adiz toward him without hesitation, because whatever calculation she is running in her head, she has already decided that his directions are better than the alternative. Adiz goes without protest. She looks at the dark corridor and then at Daejin and then steps inside, because she is 7 years old and her mother said move, and she trusts her mother with the complete, uncomplicated trust of a child who has never been given a reason not to. Nkechi stops at the corridor entrance and turns back. The drive, she says. He looks at her. If they find it. They won't, he says. Go. She does not move immediately. She looks at him with the specific expression of someone who has been let down by enough people to have developed a highly accurate instinct for who means what they say, and she is running that instinct on him right now, in real time, with her daughter standing 3 feet away in a dark corridor. Whatever she decides, she steps inside. Daejin pulls the panel closed behind her. He turns back to the room. The service corridor door, the one that should not exist on any city filing, opens. 3 men. Not 4. 3, which means one is somewhere else, which is always the variable that matters most. The first man through the door has his eyes on the table, on the cake, on the phone lying face up, on the evidence of recent occupation, and that half-second of environmental assessment is the half-second Daejin has already used. What follows is not a fair fight. It is not designed to be. The second man goes down before he fully clears the doorframe. The third reaches for his radio and does not finish the motion. The first, the one who came in reading the room, turns out to be the most capable of the 3, and also the most frightened once he realizes what he has walked into, which are 2 things that rarely produce good outcomes in combination. Daejin pins him against the wall. How many in the building? He asks. The man's jaw clamps shut. Daejin asks again. Same words. Same voice. No change in volume, no change in expression, just the specific patience of someone who has done this before and is not in a hurry because he already knows how it ends. The man breaks on the third ask. 11, he says. 3 teams. 2 on the roof. 1 in the lobby. And the order? The man swallows. Take the woman. Take the child. The pause. Leave you for the last team. Daejin absorbs this. Who gave the order? The man looks at him, and in his eyes, for just a fraction of a second, there is something that is not fear. Something closer to pity. Someone who said you'd already be tired by the time they got here, he says. Someone who's been planning this since the day your sister died. He does not react to that. Not outwardly. Not in any way the man pinned against the wall could measure or report. But something in his chest compresses, a single, hard contraction, like a fist closing around something it has been holding for 17 years, and then releases, and what replaces it is not grief and not rage but something colder than both of them combined. Clarity. He leaves the man zip-tied to the exposed pipe running along the base of the north wall and moves back through the main room with the efficiency of someone who has stopped deciding and started executing. The security panel is dark. External networks still jammed. Elevators still sealed. Which means his options for moving Nkechi and Adiz out of the building are exactly two: the maintenance corridor that runs from the hidden panel down to the 38th floor, and the roof, which currently has 2 men on it, which makes it the worse option by a significant margin. Maintenance corridor it is. He opens the panel. They are exactly where he left them. Nkechi standing, one hand on the wall, one hand on Adiz's shoulder. Adiz sitting on the floor of the corridor with her back against the concrete, her backpack in her lap, her notebook open on her knees. She is drawing. In the dark. By feel. She looks up when the light from the main room reaches her, and she does not look relieved. She looks patient, the way children look when they have decided to trust an adult completely and are simply waiting for the adult to catch up. There are 11 men in the building, Daejin says, because Nkechi deserves the real number. 3 teams. The corridor takes you to 38. Fire exit at the east end. It opens outward, no alarm, hinges on the left. He presses the worn key card into her hand. Street level exits to an alley. Walk east. Do not run. Running draws attention. Walk 3 blocks east and take the stairwell of the Myri parking structure to level 2. Blue door on the south wall. Code is 7-7-1-4. Wait there. Nkechi takes the card. Her fingers close around it tightly. And you, she asks. There is someone in this building who has been planning tonight for 17 years, he says. I am not leaving until I find out who. Something moves across Nkechi's face. Not fear for herself, which is interesting, but something that looks closer to fear for him, which is more interesting still. She has known him for less than an hour. She should not be afraid for him. She should be moving. Mama. Adiz stands. She has put the notebook away. She looks at Daejin with those eyes that do not know how to be anything except completely direct. Are you going to be okay? He looks at her. This child, with her matches and her candles and her absolute certainty that birthdays require wishes, this child who walked into the most dangerous room in Seoul and sat down and started drawing in the dark while 11 armed men moved through the floors below her, because her mother said wait, and so she waited. Yes, he says. It is the first thing he has said tonight that he does not know if he means. He pulls the panel closed. He stands alone in the main room and listens. The building has a specific acoustic quality on this floor. Sound carries differently through the marble and reinforced glass than it does through standard construction, which he accounted for when he chose this space, which means he can hear the second team moving in the east stairwell before they are anywhere close to this floor. 3 sets of footsteps. Measured. 1 slightly uneven, old injury, right knee, compensating on ascent. He knows that walk. He has known it for 12 years. He crosses to the far side of the room and waits beside the stairwell door with the stillness of someone who has made peace with what comes next. The door opens, and the man who walks through it first is not a stranger. He is the last person Daejin trusted completely. The last person in the room the night his sister died. His name is Choi Woozing, 50 years old, gray at the temples. A scar along the left jaw from an incident in Busan that Daejin was present for and helped him survive, which makes standing on opposite sides of this doorway a specific kind of irony that neither of them needs to say out loud. He looks at Daejin the way old enemies look at each other when they used to be something else first, with the weight of everything that came before sitting visibly on the expression, making it complicated in ways that a stranger's face would never be. You look tired, Woozing says. You look alive, Daejin says. I spent 2 years believing you weren't. I know. The pause. I needed you to. The 2 men with him hold their positions. They are good, still, alert, trigger discipline evident. But they are not moving because Woozing has not signaled them to move, and whatever this conversation is, he wants to have it first. The woman, Woozing says. And the child. Where? Gone. Dae-jin. Gone, he repeats. No variation in tone. No offer of negotiation inside the word. Woozing exhales, not frustrated, more like a man confirming something he already suspected. He takes 3 steps into the room and stops. His eyes move to the table. The cake. The candles, burned most of the way down now, wax pooling on the frosting, still lit, still holding. Something crosses his face that Dae-jin cannot fully read, which is unusual, because he has been reading this man for 20 years. She had a drive, Woozing says. You know what's on it. I know what's on it. Then you know it goes beyond us. Beyond the organization. The names on that drive, they will not stop at 11 men, Dae-jin. They will level this building. They will erase the woman, the child, every record that she ever existed. I know, Dae-jin says. So give me the drive. Walk away. Tonight ends clean. Silence. The candles flicker. Dae-jin looks at the man across from him. The man who sat at his table, who knew his sister's name, who stood in a room where poison was served and walked out breathing, and feels something settle in him. Not anger. Something quieter and more permanent than anger. You gave the order, he says. 17 years ago. You gave the order, and then you stood at her funeral and held my arm while I buried her. Woozing does not deny. That is the moment Dae-jin understands the full shape of tonight. This was never about the drive. The drive was the mechanism, the thing that would bring Nkechi here, that would bring Dae-jin out of the stillness he has lived inside for years, that would put him in a room where Woozing could look at him directly and offer him the exit and watch whether he took it. This was a test. Or a goodbye. Woozing nods once to the men beside him. They raise their weapons. And Dae-jin, who has been standing 3 feet from the emergency suppression panel he installed in this room 2 years ago for exactly this scenario, hits the switch. The room fills with white. He finds them in the maintenance corridor. They did not make it to the 38th floor. The stairwell on the east side was sealed, Woozing's team blocking the exit, which means Woozing planned for the corridor too, planned for the key card, planned for most of what Dae-jin thought was improvisation tonight. And so Nkechi stopped and pulled Adiz into the alcove at the corridor's midpoint and waited, because she is the kind of woman who stops when stopping is smarter than moving, and that quality alone has kept her daughter alive through 3 months of being hunted. She looks at him when the corridor door opens. Her eyes go to his hands first, checking for injury, which is practical, and then to his face, which tells her more. Woozing, she asks. He stops. You know that name. Emeka warned me, she says. Before he sent me here. He said if a man named Woozing made contact, if he offered a trade, any trade, not to believe the terms. Dae-jin absorbs this. Emeka, then, was not entirely compromised. Whatever Woozing used him for, whatever kept him alive past the point he should have been erased, Emeka built one exit into it. One piece of real information, delivered to the right person, time to arrive through Nkechi. He was not kept alive by Woozing. He was kept alive by someone who knew Woozing was coming and needed a messenger who could not be traced back to them. This runs deeper than tonight. But tonight is what he has. We have 4 minutes before the suppression clears and Woozing resets his team, he says. The roof is our only way out. I cleared the 2 men up there before you came back through. There is a maintenance ladder on the north face. It connects to the structure on the adjacent building, which has a working elevator. Adiz stands up. She has been sitting in the alcove with her backpack, and she reaches inside it now and removes the USB drive. Not the one Nkechi mentioned, but a second one, smaller, with a red stripe along one edge, and holds it out to Dae-jin. Both of them look at her. The man at the office, Adiz says. Her voice is matter-of-fact, the way children are matter-of-fact about things adults complicate. 3 weeks ago. He put this in my bag when Mama wasn't looking. I didn't tell you because I didn't know if it was bad or good. She considers this. He was scared when he did it. I think that means good. Dae-jin takes the drive. He turns it over in his fingers. A red stripe. He knows this encoding. It is a dead man's archive, a file format used specifically to store documentation that releases automatically to predetermined recipients if a check-in code is not entered within a fixed window. Emika's window, which stopped being entered the moment Emika disappeared, which means this drive has already sent its contents somewhere, to someone. And whatever is on it, whatever Emika spent however long compiling at whatever cost to himself, is already in motion, already beyond Woozing's reach, already doing the thing it was built to do. Dae-jin looks at Adiz. This child carried the detonator of an entire network's destruction inside a backpack with a notebook and a box of matches, for 3 weeks, without knowing it, and sat in a dark corridor and drew pictures while 11 men moved through the floors below her. "You did well," he says. Quietly. Like he means it. Because he does. He pockets the drive and looks at Nkechi. She is looking back at him with an expression he has not seen directed at him in a very long time. Not gratitude, not fear, not the careful calculation of someone figuring out what he is going to cost them. Something closer to recognition. Like she is seeing for the first time what is actually in the room. "Roof," he says. "Now." She nods. They move. The corridor rises toward the access hatch, and above it, Seoul spreads in every direction, cold and loud and indifferent and alive. And for the first time tonight, Dae-jin is moving toward something instead of holding a position. Behind them, on the floor below, the suppression gas begins to clear. Woozing is already giving new orders. And somewhere in the city, on a server that Emika chose carefully and funded quietly and never told anyone about, files are opening. The roof is cold. Wind off the Han River, 40 floors up, hits differently than it does at street level. Sharper, more personal, like the city is reminding you exactly how far you are from the ground. Dae-jin moves across the rooftop with Nkechi and Adiz close behind him, staying low, staying in the shadow band along the north parapet where the building's own light signature creates a blind spot for anyone watching from the structures below. The maintenance ladder is where he said it would be. He goes first, tests the anchor points, all holding, and then looks back at Adiz, who is examining the ladder with the focused expression of a child deciding whether this is a problem or an adventure, and appears to land on adventure. She crosses without hesitation. Nkechi follows. The adjacent building's rooftop is empty, its elevator house unlocked. Dae-jin has a key for this too, because a man who has survived as long as he has survived specifically by building more exits than he thinks he will ever need. They take the elevator down in silence. Lobby is clear. Side entrance opens to a street that smells like rain and street food and the particular nighttime energy of a city that never fully sleeps. They walk east. Not fast. Just walking. 3 people on a Seoul street at midnight, which is not unusual, which is the point. Adiz slips her hand into Dae-jin's. He does not break stride. He does not look down immediately. But after 2 steps, he looks down, and she is looking straight ahead, perfectly calm, as if this is something she has always done, as if his hand is simply the nearest available hand and she has decided it is acceptable. He does not let go. The miry parking structure is 3 blocks east. Level 2. Blue door. The code works. Inside, a room with 2 chairs, a table, a burner phone, and a contact number that connects to the one person in Seoul who has spent the last 4 years waiting for Dae-jin to need a favor large enough to call it in. He makes the call. While he waits, he sets the red striped drive on the table and looks at it. Emika is gone. Whatever Woozing's people did with him, whatever it cost him to build this archive and deliver it through a 7-year-old girl's backpack, the outcome of that cost is sitting on a table in a parking structure, already dispersed, already beyond anyone's ability to unsend. It will reach investigators, journalists, the specific category of official who has been building a case for years with everything except the documentation needed to close it. It will not fix everything. It will not bring his sister back. But it will end this specific version of this organization, these specific men, the structure that has been running on the bones of what he built and the blood of the people it was built to protect. Nkechi sits in the chair across from him. Adiz is asleep against her shoulder. Out completely, the way children fall asleep when the crisis finally passes and their body decides it is owed the rest it has been deferring for days. Her hand still loosely holds her backpack strap. She carried it for 3 weeks, Nkechi says quietly. Not accusing. Just, still arriving at the weight of it. She is extraordinary, Daejin says. Nkechi looks at him. So are you? In ways I did not expect. He does not respond to that. Not because he disagrees, but because he has spent so long being extraordinary in ways that cost other people something that he is still working out what it means to be useful in a way that does not leave a body count as its primary evidence. His contact arrives in 40 minutes. Papers. A car. A route out of the city that does not cross any checkpoint currently active in Woozing's network, and Woozing's network, within 72 hours of the drive's contents reaching the right people, will not be a network anymore. Before they move, Adiz wakes up. She looks at the table. At Daejin. You never made your wish, she says. Same words. Same voice. Like no time has passed, like rooftops and maintenance corridors and cold Seoul streets are simply the intermission between the part that mattered and the part that still needs finishing. Nkechi watches him. He looks at the drive on the table. At the burner phone. At the door that leads back out into a city that is still moving, still loud, still indifferent to everything that happened tonight on the 40th floor. Then he looks at Adiz. And at Nkechi. And at the specific, impossible fact of this, that he sat alone in a room with an unlit cake in dead silence, and the universe sent him a desperate mother and a little girl with a box of matches and more courage than most men he has commanded, and that all 3 of them are still here, still breathing, in a parking structure in Seoul at 1 in the morning. He closes his eyes. He makes a wish. Not for power. Not for safety. Not for the silence to return, because for the first time in 17 years, the silence is not what he wants. He opens his eyes. Adiz is watching him with complete seriousness. Did you wish? She asks. Yes, he says. She nods, satisfied, as if this confirms something she already knew. Outside, the city keeps moving. Somewhere in it, Woozing is making new calculations, but his margins are narrowing with every hour, and he does not yet know about the red stripe, and by the time he does, it will already be too late. And in a parking structure on a street that smells like rain, a man who stopped believing in birthdays sits across from a woman who never stopped fighting for her daughter, and between them, a 7-year-old sleeps with her hands still wrapped around the strap of a backpack that changed everything. This is what power actually looks like when it is finally used for something real. Not a threat. Not a transaction. A choice. And sometimes, the rarest kind of sometimes, the choice you make at the very last moment is the one that makes every hard year before it means something. If this story reached something in you, if you have ever felt like you were sitting in a room alone, waiting for something you stopped believing would come, drop a comment below and tell us what you would have wished for. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that reminds you what people are capable of when everything is on the line. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. These stories exist because of you, and every comment, every share, every subscriber makes the next one possible. The next story is coming, and you do not want to miss it.